last minute.
Oh, okay.
Joey's does that.
Oh, well, I love yoga too. So, how many people like to participate in yoga? Yeah?
Okay.
Thank you. Awesome. Well, it's interesting that, we're talking about yoga because yoga is an awesome thing for people with ADHD. Something that we're going to, well, that's what we're going to talk about today. So, Sandra, should I start because it's not quite?
Well, I'm going to introduce you, but Jane did a good thing here by introducing herself to you, right? Mm-hmm. And she's a life coach. So we want to welcome her, first of all. Does anyone here, I have to ask that each time, have trouble being videotaped for the website?
No.
Nope.
Okay, does anyone have any problem, like commenting or asking her questions?
No.
In this regard? Okay, so I told her what a wonderful group you are, okay? So from last week on the legal resources, did anyone miss it and want something? Okay.
I still need the number for to get the will done.
Oh, okay, you're gonna have to ask, well, they do that too. These people, you call these people here, on here. How about the legal resources, anybody?
Sure.
Okay, they gave a wonderful presentation.
Yeah.
You were here.
See that?
You were here, weren't you?
Yeah, I think you're getting on news. I got it.
No. Anybody else, the legal resources? Okay.
I didn't get one.
Ain't nobody sitting there.
Sorry,
Nobody
Lawrence
sitting
is
there.
Edit told me, that's why I get it.
No, she's talking about them to care of
She
you.
did.
Oh.
You want to sit there?
They had a
Ain't
book.
nobody sitting there.
Okay. So Jane's going to share with you her wealth of knowledge, like in this aspect, with cognitive disabilities and the ADHD. And we could begin. All
Okay,
right,
go
Jane?
ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. First, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself and how I came to be a life coach and particularly working with ADHD. I'm very passionate about the topic because I have 3 adult children, and the oldest of which was diagnosed with ADHD, and it turns out some bipolar, at about 13. So up until that point, there were lots of challenges and different things that we kind of didn't understand. And through the years, I, like everyone who discovers that their child has a challenge, it's a little different, did a lot of exploration of different kinds of resources for myself, and ultimately came to coaching really because I was looking to balance my own life as a parent and having a family with some challenges. And so after going through the coaching and realizing the powerful tool that I have, and I'll explain more about what coaching is, I realized how helpful it could be not only to myself, but to my family and to others. And so I not only decided to become a coach myself, but also to specifically help people with ADHD and other challenges, because as we'll discuss, it's not necessarily freestanding. So to tell you a little bit about what ADHD is. Does anyone here know what ADHD is?
No.
Attention hyper deficit disorder or something.
Attention definite. Yeah, okay.
That thing.
I worked with the kids. Good grief.
Yeah, uh-oh.
So yes, it's a mouthful. And I'm sorry, tell me your name again.
Patricia.
Patricia.
Yeah, Patricia.
And what do you know about ADHD?
I know attention deficit disorder, hyperactivity disorder. I know there's also the ADD that's, they don't have the hyperactivity as well. I'm wondering if, because I believe it's in my family, and I'm on Adderall, and I'm wondering, you had made a mention, I'm wondering if if there's a high number of people with ADHD that are bipolar, does it seem to go hand in hand, or?
Very good question. And yes, that's absolutely true. And as we'll talk about, ADHD is really extraordinarily unique to the individual there, you know, it's a diagnostic term because it allows us to, you know, understand it from a diagnostic point of view and also how to treat it medically. But that's merely a term, and we're all individuals and we all have unique brain chemistry. And that brain chemistry might experience ADD or ADHD, might experience bipolar, or any number of different challenges that people have. So we are going to definitely talk more about that. So that's a great beginning description. So ADHD, as we've said, is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And the sort of more medical term is that it's a neurobiological disorder that involves attention problems, it involves hyperactivity problems, and also impulsivity. So what does all that mean? Well, to start with the inattention, it's kind of, you know, the person who, you're talking to them and they're watching a fly that's flying around the window and you think they're not listening at all.
Oh,
But-
they're looking another way, like not.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They're just somewhere, they look like they're dreaming somewhere, but they may have actually heard everything that you were saying.
Well,
Right here, Liz.
it's like I am, you know, I mean, you could be saying something to
You
me,
better
and I'm
hear-
like,
I got
looking
it,
over
right
here,
here.
but I'm looking at you.
Absolutely.
And my sister said, how did he do that? And he still understood what I said to him, and he's looking like at the wall, and he's got his eyes at me, and she said, how did he do that? I said, is there something I know what to do? I hear what you're saying, but I'm trying to discover something else.
Great, that's fantastic, Larry. That's exactly, you know, what people are feeling. And so for the people that are their family or their friends, they may not be
It's the
getting
back of you.
it. They're wondering, you know, why is this person not paying attention to me?
See, that's what they said.
Right here.
But you could be looking like this, and I'm looking at you at the same time. So it's more like we are paying attention, but we got our mind somewhere else.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. Does anybody else experience that or know someone who does?
My son, and it was a challenge in school before it was, there was more known about it. There was a challenge because they thought he just wasn't obeying, but he was picking up everything they were saying. He was just fiddling and doing other things, and then I don't know if the opposition of defiance is part of ADHD as well, because then you would get upset with them, being upset with him, since
Yeah.
it was oppositional.
Absolutely, Patricia. Yeah, but that can be something that people experience as well.
Oh, yeah, what I wanted to say is, what about that bipolar? Because my neighbor, when he talks to you, he's very loud. He's very loud. Yelling and screaming, I'm like, you don't have to talk so loud. There's a lady, his daughter told me that he was bipolar. You know that? Is that why he talks loud like that? And I said, I never knew that.
That can be part of it, because that kind of takes us to the next facet that we're going to talk about is the impulsivity. Okay, so what's impulsivity in this particular instance? It's just, you know, saying the first thing that comes to your mind, perhaps speaking out of turn, maybe saying something that may not be completely appropriate for that moment, or that the response just might not be what other people are expecting. They might be taken aback. And that's all part of the impulsivity. It's also, when we talk about adults experiencing this, impulsivity could mean making kind of rash decisions. And sometimes the adult who's experiencing that can make some pretty poor business decisions, financial decisions. That's pretty typical.
Right.
It can be challenging to handle finances when now you've got these two pieces that we've already talked about, you know, in place. So we're not just talking about children, we're talking about adults.
Grown-ups, yeah.
Because when I mentioned that it is a neurobiological disorder, that means that people are born with it. It is part of their genetic makeup. It's part of how their brain is wired. And that's what can cause some of these kinds of differences that we see in someone that's experiencing ADD. And so then the third part which is the hyperactivity, and you're right, Patricia, not everybody really manifests that piece of it. At one time, ADD was just called simply that, ADD, that was the umbrella term. But it became recognized that most people have some degree of hyperactivity, meaning they don't sit still, when it's in children, they're very, very energetic, they may act out a lot, it's difficult for them to sit in the classroom and be attentive because they've got that intention and that just physicality where they want to move and get around because that movement actually helps them feel better. So when we talk about hyperactivity, we can have someone that has a little bit of movement or someone that has a lot of movement. And that may be something that carries on throughout their lives. Even as adults, they might have a hard time sitting still, paying attention, and which is why in a couple of minutes, actually right now, we can all just stretch. Everybody want to stretch? Because when we do this, and just move our hands and move around and reach down a little bit, that simple movement helps our brain. Whether we have ADD or not, that energy helps
your brain.
Absolutely, it helps charge up the chemicals. So whether we have hyperactivity or not, our brain likes us to move around. So that's okay most of the time, but if we're a child in a classroom, our teacher expects us and the other students expect us to be attentive. So now, what happens? Let's take the instance of a child who's manifesting some of these differences.
They don't know. They probably don't know.
Tell me your name again.
Joanne?
Joanne.
I had a student with ADHD, and he would climb in, our desks lift up. He would climb in his desk and pull it down. He would fall asleep sometimes. And you'd think he was sound asleep because he was snoring, but he wasn't. And he took in everything like a sponge. You know, he knew everything that you said in class. He just couldn't sit still. He had to walk and walk and walk in the room. So in our classroom, like, you know, I might have a student over there and the student over there, but they're still listening to what I'm working with them with.
So that's very interesting. So how do you handle that in the classroom?
It was very hard in the beginning. Like I had a table and the teacher had a table. And, you know, I'd have, you know, two that would be, you know, like on opposite ends of the thing, but as long as I talked, you know, like the lessons, you know, with them and stuff and asked the questions, they could answer me. Like I said, they absorbed everything like a sponge. And then the teacher would be with another group that may not all have, you know, we try to work them together, mainstream them in together. Like he had the group, but he had some ADHD kids, and then, you know, we had kids with other problems too.
So that's awesome, Joanne. So you're really able to work with the way the child was learning best, and still integrate the children into the classroom successfully.
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, because there were so many different kinds of special needs in our class, you know, that, I don't know, the ADHD, just to me, was a big eye-opener, and now I have a grandson who's 14 that has ADHD.
How do you get that, though? What does that come from?
So ADHD is, as when I started talking, using the words neurobiological disorder, it means that genetically a person is born with a certain brain chemistry. Okay, so what's brain chemistry? Well, when we talk about brain chemistry and ADHD, we're talking about something called executive function. And that's kind of the process that our brain works to help us organize and carry out tasks. From the simplest task of going in the bathroom to brush our teeth and wash up, to the more complex tasks as we get older of schoolwork, and then the schoolwork gets more complicated, or it might be a job where we're required to organize things.
Yeah, and you can't do it.
And our brain has to hold all of that. So with ADHD, our brain doesn't work like the person who is able to organize more easily. So what happens is a person will have a certain thought, and they'll do that particular step, but then they see that picture on the wall and they think, you know, wow, that's really interesting. And the mind starts to fix on that thought. And so all those kinds of thinking really interfere with some of the very daily
Things that you're really
activities.
supposed to do.
Right, right. And if somebody is also, has an obsessive tendency, they will, you know, be stuck maybe for 5 minutes looking at that picture, and then they'll completely forget, okay, well, what was it I was going to do? Now, we all experience that at different times in our life, and I've experienced that. You know, that happens to all of us, you know, sometimes as we age or it's hormonal, but that's different than ADHD.
Well, that's what the psychiatrist said when I went to Social Security and I had to go to 3 different doctors. That's what he said. He said, I can't diagnose you on what you might have, but he says, we're going to try something. So I got up and he said, you walk over there and I'll walk over here. So I walked with him and I'm like, and he was like, I can't do it for when. He goes, all right. He goes, you're done. So when I went to the next doctor the following week, he did something like, I'm going to point this way and you point that way. So I was pointing and he's like, okay. He goes, all right. He goes, you're good. And when I went to the 3rd doctor, he said, when I put my foot here, you put your foot that way. And I could follow along with it. All right, I'll make the decision. And he goes, and so about a year later, I got a letter and I started getting, you know, money, Social Security, like SSD, because that's what was put out for me to be on. You know, I don't know what SSD means. I didn't know what it means. You know, what is it?
Well, it's something to help you financially.
Yeah, but I mean, what does it represent? You know what?
Well, if we could, Larry, so it's something, if we can get back to topic, and maybe this is something that
Yeah.
Sandra will help you later on,
Yeah.
because I don't want to address something that is not my expertise,
Right.
but it's a great question.
Right.
And when people really do have challenges, there are things in our government and that can help us
Yeah.
to,
All right, let's,
because some people really can struggle, and it makes it very difficult for them to work, maybe at all.
yeah.
Maybe to work in the job that they might really want, because just because someone has ADHD does not mean that they are not intelligent. Some extraordinarily intelligent people, like
Well,
Einstein, I think everybody knows Einstein, was thought to have ADHD. Leonardo da Vinci was thought to have ADHD.
How would you check on that to see if you have it?
Well, you mean today?
I mean, how
Certainly
would you
back,
check?
certainly back then, they didn't know, but what we know about these individuals, that's what is felt about them. And we know that you know, Leonardo da Vinci created thousands of
Could you go
inventions.
to a doctor or psychiatrist?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So just to kind of, you know, continue a little bit about, you know, what ADHD is, and
Yeah.
kind of using that example of a Leonardo da Vinci,
Yeah.
he would start, sometimes he wouldn't finish every project, but he would start and invent numerous things on a regular basis. Many of them were finished, some of them were unfinished.
Right.
And so a lot of times people with ADHD exhibit extraordinary creative talent. So there's lots of differences in the way somebody is able to think and able to process with ADHD. So I think, you know, that one of the challenges with it is that when youngsters present with it, other children and adults often don't get it. So it's fortunate in the instances where we do understand that a child has this challenge, so we can provide that child with appropriate living and appropriate learning opportunities that foster the most in that child. And that's kind of where my experience as a life coach comes in, because what I try to do with people is to really help them figure out, okay, how does my brain work, and what is it that I'm looking for in my life? How am I going to get the balance that I need? How am I going to get, in this case, you know, more often I work with adults than children, because adults, when I say an adult, in my work, I mean someone who is old enough to really want to make a